Hi everyone, my name is Bianca and welcome to Vintage on Tap. It has been so long since I've been on YouTube, so I wanted to come by and say thank you so much for still being subscribed. Also, look at this brand new space, a brand new home for Vintage on Tap, and I wanted to check in and just let you know this is all just due to a move. 2021 starting out with a brand new lease on life and hopefully less lockdown time. But I wanted to do this particular video, a 1950s peplum top, as a major throwback to the very first video that I ever did on YouTube, which was Simplicity 1460. Thinking back on that first video, you know, we shot it all weird. I had so many feels about it, but being able to do it justice, especially in this brand new space, and really like digging into the scallops again, the peplum skirt again, and reconnecting with what originally brought me to YouTube in the first place was what I wanted to do with this video. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's go ahead and start sewing. All right, so I'm looking forward to using this beautiful fabric. I actually got this at Mood, but for the bodice, it actually has 6 darts. So the ones in the back are pretty straightforward, just straight darts. The ones on the side are actually French darts. You can kind of see here in my pattern piece, they kind of come up from the waist-ish side, the bottom, and they go up towards the bust. So let's go ahead and get them done. Okay, so I actually did the 2 back darts off camera, but here on the frame is the 2 front darts. Remember, line up all your notches, and you're going to be stitching all the way to the corner, but just make sure to gradually curve out at the corner and have your needle fall off the edge of the fabric as you're sewing. Go slowly if need be, just to make sure that you get those stitches right. All right, and here you can see the 2 darts there in the front already ready to go. At this point, you're going to go ahead and pin your front and back pieces together. At this stage, it's just like the side seams as well as the pockets. Again, make sure your notches are lining up as you go. Okay, so to wrap up the work on the bodice is the armholes. So these ones are pretty simple. It's just a turning it in. I think I went about 1/4 of an inch, gave it a press, and then once I'd gone all the way around the armhole, giving it another 1/4 inch turn. And at that point, that's what I took to the sewing machine. One of the big selling points about this particular pattern that I'm making is these beautiful scallops that are on the neckline. The catch about them is that they are extremely curved. So sewing and working around them has to go pretty slowly, as well as like clipping into the notches as we get into things. But you know, if you're working on this as well, just make sure that as you're stitching around these, you go slowly, you pivot, like as gently as you can, and you know, don't just like pedal to the metal with your sewing machine, because you will be able to tell as you press things later on. So just go slowly, specifically in the front, because we'll be able to see them the most, and have fun sewing them. For the facing, you know, I actually have the interfacing that I use is more of a netting style. This one here is pretty basic. It doesn't have any stretch to it, so it's really nice just to keep everything stable. From here, it's just nothing but pressure and a high heat just to get everything to stick. And then also don't make the same mistake I did of accidentally interfacing to your ironing board. Once all of the facing pieces are stitched together, you can actually go ahead and pin everything in place. It's actually really important just to go slowly here and make sure everything lines up, because you don't want that beautiful neckline to get warped. And as I said at the beginning, of the section. Slowly, you know, pivot around the turns, lift up that presser foot just so that you can get all those beautiful curves. And then here at the end, taking out some notches, and this will help when you turn it inside out that everything sits correctly. Last but not least, that final stitch line, just to make sure things don't roll. We're almost done with this particular blouse. Very exciting. We're moving on to the peplum of the blouse, which is this beautiful C-shaped-ish curved line. Anyway, for the curves here, what I ended up doing was stay stitching the top, which is part of the instructions, but super important. I actually stay stitched this as soon as I cut the fabric out, just so that it wouldn't not warp while I was moving pieces around, especially since it's the second day of shooting. Regardless, you know, do your stay stitching right away. That way that the fibers, as you're moving things around, are not stretching out and getting bigger and just warping and looking weird. If they do that before you're able to stay stitch, a little bit of steam on the top will shrink things back down into the shape that they need to be. But before I go on with the rest of the sewing this video, please make sure to hit subscribe on the bottom, as well as the little bell if you're liking this video, and let's get back to sewing. Okay, you can see that I am pinning all the different peplum pieces together. They're pretty straightforward for the most part. I would just say make sure to sew the right pieces together, because it's very easy to get confused and sew like the front pieces together by accident. Cool. Once the peplum is stitched together, you can actually finish up the front seams, and then at that point pin it to the bodice itself. If you have done a lot of pattern adjustments, you'll just want to make sure that everything does indeed line up, just because, you know, at least in my case, I edited the front and then did the peplums after. For the peplum, we're actually going to be doing a little demo before we go to the machine, just because it's a little bit tricky. Not that it's inherently hard, but just looking at the diagrams in this particular pattern, it doesn't make sense as easily. But so I've laid out the top here. This here is the band for the facing. We have the peplum skirt. But as you can see, the facing still extends down into the skirt part of the peplum. So what we're going to be doing is, and let me straighten it out so you can see it better. We're actually going to be turning the facing inside out, essentially. So it'll be right sides together. And so you can see here the inner facing and the stitch line from where we understitched it. And then here you can see that the peplum itself is essentially right sides together. So what you're going to want to do is kind of make sure that there's no extra fabric that's accumulated here along the facing, and that it goes all the way down. So when you go down to the machine, and I'll pull out my tweezers here. When you go to the machine, what you're going to want to do is at the 5/8 mark is where you'll be stitching all the way to the end of the facing. So this is going to be essentially what it's going to end up carrying over while you're hemming the bottom of the peplum. But for now, you're just going to go up until the end of the facing. Once you get to the end of the facing and you tie it off and you do your back stitch, then you'll take your scissors, which I don't know where they are right now, but you're going to basically cut out underneath that 5/8. And so you'll have almost like a little notch along the bottom that ends, and then you'll have the rest of your peplum skirt the way that it was before. So we're going to go ahead and do that in the machine. But as I said, 5/8 along the bottom, and then you're going to cut that little rectangle out. All right, important part. Make sure to cut very, very slowly just so you don't accidentally clip into anything you're not supposed to. And at that point, turn it inside out and give it a really solid press. Here I'm just doing the final hemming. I decided to go with these really beautiful delicate buttons that I actually found on Etsy. They're this lilac material, which looks really nice against this floral fabric. I didn't want them to be too busy to distract, so very simple, just a 2-hole, and they have this very nice, beautiful sheen when the light hits the fabric. Okay, I set up my sewing machine with my buttonhole foot. I know everybody's buttonhole foot is a little bit differently, so obviously read the instructions on your machine before you do this work. Also, test it on a scrap piece of fabric just to make sure that the buttons come out like they're supposed to. Okay, in my particular blouse, I ended up doing 4 buttons rather than the 3 that were in the original design, just because I wanted a little extra coverage across the front. But there you can see it's completed, looking gorgeous, looking beautiful. I hope you enjoyed watching the process of sewing this 1950s peplum top. I definitely enjoyed doing a little bit of a throwback and making this iconic piece for me, especially since I have so much history with it being the first garment that I ever made for the YouTube channel. You know, even though I've sewn so many different garments since then, even though my skills have increased a lot, I still experienced a little bit of fitting issues with this, like retackling it with fresh eyes. I spent something like 15 hours trying to get the bodice to fit right, and even then there are definitely some things that I wish I would have done better, but at this point it is what it is. I'm just happy and grateful that I got to remake this particular blouse all over again. If you have made a garment again, like the second time around, let me know down in the comments what that garment was and kind of what was your learnings from making it the second time. But with all that said, I hope you liked this video. Go ahead and give it the like, share, subscribe, all the places, all the stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.